Dear learners, welcome to the another new lecture of Engineering Chemistry e-lecture series. In today's video, we will discuss the definition of boiler feed water, requisites of boiler feed water, and the different type of boiler troubles, which included scale and sludge formation, boiler corrosion, caustic embrittlement, and priming and foaming. Let us begin with the definition of boiler feed water. The water used in the boilers in industries and powerhouses for steam generation purposes is called as the boiler feed water. That means the boiler feed water is the water which is used in the boiler for steam generation. So because it is used in the boiler, that is why it is known as the boiler feed water. Now, for steam generation purposes, what are the requisites of boiler feed water? So, some key requirements of boiler feed water are: first is the hardness. The hardness of boiler feed water should be less than 0.2 ppm. That means it should not contain high amount of calcium and magnesium salts. Second, suspended solids. It should be free from sand, silt and debris to prevent the clogging in boilers. Presence of dissolved gases. The oxygen and carbon dioxide may cause corrosion and these gases must be removed from the boiler. Caustic alkalinity. The caustic alkalinity in boiler feed water should be in the range of 0.15 ppm to 0.45 ppm. So these are some basic requirements of the boiler feed water. Now, the boiler troubles. What are the boiler troubles? The boiler troubles are the defects in boilers due to the use of imperfect water in boiler. Now, what is the imperfect water here? The imperfect water is the water which does not meet out these requirements. That water is known as the imperfect water. So if we are using the water which contains high amount of salt, high amount of gases in this, so this is the imperfect water. When such water is used in the boiler, it may create various type of defects in boiler, and these defects in the boiler are known as the boiler troubles. Various type of boiler troubles are scale and sludge formation, boiler corrosion, caustic embrittlement, and priming and foaming. So first discuss the scale and sludge formation. We know that in boilers, water is converted into steam. The continuous evaporation of water in the boilers increases the concentration of dissolved salts in the boiler, remaining water present in the boiler. So as the steam generation continues, the concentration of the salt in the remaining water in the boiler continuously increases. When the concentration reaches beyond the saturation point, the impurities start precipitating out in order to their solubilities. The salt which is least soluble separating out first. So the continuous evaporation or steam generation in boilers may cause precipitation of salts in the boiler feed water. This precipitate may be of two types, sludge or the scale. What is the difference between these two? When the dissolved salts are precipitated in the form of loose, non-adherent and slimy PPT, then it is known as the sludge. While when precipitation takes place in the form of hard adhering coating on the inner walls of the boiler, then it is known as the scale. So these are the two types of precipitate formed in the boiler feed water which may create some problems in the boiler. That is why these are considered as the boiler troubles. First, let us see the sludge formation causes. Sludges are formed by those salts which have higher solubility in the hot water than the cold water, such as magnesium chloride, magnesium carbonate, magnesium sulfate and the calcium chloride. So these salts are responsible for the sludge formation in the boiler feed water. Now what are the disadvantages of sludge formation? Why we are discussing sludge formation as the boiler trouble? Because it has some disadvantages. So what are the disadvantages here? Sludges are the poor conductors of heat. Therefore, they tend to waste a portion of heat generated and thus decreases the efficiency of the boiler. Second one is the excess sludge formation disturbs the working of the boiler because of the choking of pipes by the sludges. Therefore, the sludge formation is considered as the boiler trouble. Now question comes to our mind that how we can prevent the sludge formation in boiler. So there are two ways by which we can prevent the sludge formation. First is use of soft water. Second one is the blow down operation. Use of soft water. If we are using soft water that contain very less amount of calcium and magnesium salts, so we can prevent the sludge formation in the boiler feed water. Second one is the blow down operation. What is blow down operation? It is the removal of concentrated water and replacing it by fresh water. So the continuous removal or continuous exchange of the concentrated water from the fresh water is known as the blow down operation, by which we can prevent the sludge formation in the boiler. Now let us discuss the scale formation. Causes of the scale formation are, there are the different causes, different salt causes the scale formation in low pressure boiler and in high pressure boilers. In low pressure boilers, the scale formation salts responsible are calcium bicarbonate and the magnesium chloride. Remember that these salts are responsible for scale formation, but scale is not formed due to these salts. Why? Because in low pressure boilers, when water evaporated, the calcium bicarbonate decomposes into calcium carbonate, which is precipitated in the form of scale. So scale is of the calcium carbonate, but calcium carbonate comes from calcium bicarbonate. So calcium bicarbonate is responsible for scale formation, but scale is formed due to the precipitation of the calcium carbonate. Similarly, magnesium chloride is responsible for the scale formation in low pressure boilers, because when water is heated, the magnesium chloride decomposes or precipitated as the magnesium hydroxide. So scale is formed due to the magnesium hydroxide, but from where magnesium hydroxide comes into the water? It comes into the water due to the reaction of magnesium chloride and water. So the salts responsible for scale formation in low pressure boilers are magnesium chloride and the calcium bicarbonate. But scale is formed by which salts? Scale is formed calcium carbonate and the magnesium hydroxide. But in high pressure boiler, the scale is formed due to the calcium sulfate and silicates of calcium and the magnesium. So the scale formation causing salts are calcium bicarbonate and magnesium chloride in low pressure boilers. And scale is formed of which salts? Calcium carbonate and the magnesium hydroxide in the low pressure boiler, while in high pressure boiler the scale forming salts are calcium sulfate and silicates of calcium and magnesium. So these are the causes of scale formation. Now disadvantages of scale formation. First, efficiency of boiler decreases. The tubes of boiler may be clogged by the scale, with the result the efficiency of boiler decreases. Second, fuel consumption is more. Since scale is poor conductor of heat, hence it hinders the flow of heat from the source to the water. Therefore, the consumption of fuel for producing steam will be much more than the usual. Third one is the reduction in the boiler life. Due to the scale formation, the heat available to water is reduced and hence more heat is required to produce the steam. This causes overheating of boiler plates and tubes. Thus, the life of the boiler reduced due to the overheating. Next one is the corrosion trouble. Due to the presence of various salts, the corrosion may take place of the boiler tubes, which decreases the efficiency and life of the boiler. Fifth one is the explosion may occur. Under high pressure of steam inside the boiler metal expands and a scale deposited on it is cracked. When this scale cracks, water suddenly enters through these small cracks to the very hot metal and get changed into the steam. This sudden high pressure near the boiler metal itself thus produces may cause the boiler burst. So in this way explosion may occur due to the scale formation. Now how we can prevent the scale formation? There are two types of methods to prevent the scale formation. One is the internal method, second one is the external methods. These internal methods are also known as the conditioning, which may include colloidal conditioning, phosphate conditioning, carbonate conditioning, Calgon conditioning, radioactive conditioning and the electrical conditioning. While the external method are also known as the water softening methods, which includes lime soda process, ion exchange process or the zeolite process. So let us begin with the internal methods. When scale formation is minimized by treating the raw water in the boiler itself, then these methods are known as the internal treatment methods. These are also known as the conditioning or sequestration. So basically the internal methods are those in which boiler feed water is treated in the boiler itself. So these are the internal methods. So first internal method is the colloidal conditioning. In this method, some colloidal substances like tannin, glue, kerosene, agar-agar, etc. are added to the boiler feed water. These colloidal substances get coated over the scale forming particles and thus prevent their coalescence and coagulation. Hence, the scale remains as loose non-sticky deposits in the form of the sludges. So basically the colloidal conditioning involves the addition of some colloidal substances to the boiler feed water. These colloidal substances prevent the coagulation of the scale forming salts and hence the scale forming salts remains as the loose and non-sticky PPT in the boiler, which can be removed by the blow down operation. Next is the phosphate conditioning. The basic fact of the phosphate conditioning is that sodium phosphate added to the boiler feed water which contains calcium or magnesium salts. These sodium phosphates converted the scale forming salts into the soluble phosphate. So now precipitate is converted into the soluble salts. So in this way we can prevent the scale formation. But in case of using the sodium phosphate, we must take in care the pH of the water because the calcium can be completely and properly precipitated in the alkaline medium. So different type of sodium salts can be used in different type of pH of the water. For example, sodium dihydrogen phosphate is used in the acidic water. Disodium hydrogen phosphate is used in the weak alkaline water. Trisodium phosphate is used in the alkaline water. Sodium phosphate is also used in the alkaline water. So phosphate conditioning is generally used in the high pressure boilers in which various type of sodium phosphate can be added to boiler feed water which convert the scale forming PPTs into the soluble phosphates. Next one is the carbonate conditioning. In this type of conditioning, sodium carbonate is added to the boiler feed water which convert the calcium sulfate into the calcium carbonate and the sodium sulfate. Basically, carbonate conditioning is used in the high pressure boiler only. We know that calcium sulfate is causing scale formation in the high pressure boilers. So, in high pressure boilers, sodium carbonate converted into the calcium carbonate. So, and we know that calcium carbonate is responsible for scale formation in low pressure boilers, but we are using this conditioning in the high pressure boiler only. So in this way, the sodium carbonate convert the scale forming salts calcium sulfate in high pressure boiler to the calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate does not form a scale in the high pressure boiler, so it can be removed easily by the blow down operation in the high pressure boilers. Fourth conditioning is the radioactive conditioning. In this technique, the radioactive salt containing tablets are placed at the certain points inside the boiler. The energy radiations emitted by these tablets prevents the coagulation of the scale forming salts. So these scale forming salts remains as the sludge in the boiler feed water, which can be removed by the blow down operation. Next one is the Calgon conditioning. Calgon is a chemical substance known as the sodium hexametaphosphate with the formula Na2Na4PO3(6). When this calgon is added to the boiler feed water, it converts the scale forming salts into the highly soluble complex. So precipitate is converted into the soluble complex, and when it is soluble, it does not precipitate and scale formation is prevented. Next one is the electrical conditioning. In this process, scale formation can be minimized by controlling the scale forming particles to stick together. In this method, a sealed glass bulb containing mercury connected to a battery is set rotating in the boiler. When water boils, the mercury bulb emits electrical discharge. This electrical discharge prevents scale forming particles to combine into the hard scale. So in this way, this electrical discharge helps to prevent the scale formation. Now, the external methods for the boiler feed water removing the scale formation. The external treatment involves the treatment of water before feeding into the boiler. So, the external treatment are the treatment methods which are carried out outside the boiler, while the internal methods are the treatment which are carried out inside the boiler. So in the external treatment, first water is purified, and after its purification, the hardness or the salt removal is carried out. So we can divide the external method into two steps. First is the water purification, which involves the removal of various type of impurities, which includes removal of suspended particles, fine suspended particles, colloidal impurities and large impurities by screening, sedimentation, coagulation and filtration methods. For the detail of water purification techniques, you can watch the video of water purification, specifically made for the water purification techniques. The link of the video is given in the description box. After the water purification, water treatment is carried out. What is the water treatment? It is the removal of hardness causing salts from the water. So water treatment is also known as the water softening techniques. Three types of these techniques are lime soda process, ion exchange process and the zeolite process. So basically water purification is the removal of impurities and water treatment is the removal of hardness causing salts from the water. These treatments will be discussed later in the next videos. That's all for today's. So before ending the video, the learning check time. Read out the question displaying on your screen and think about that. Which salt is responsible for scale formation in high pressure boilers? Magnesium chloride, magnesium hydroxide, calcium sulfate and calcium chloride. Yes, you are correct. Option C, calcium sulfate is the correct option for scale formation in the high pressure boilers. So now that is the end of today's video. To unlock more awesome content, you can hit the like button and subscribe my channel. Thank you so much.